infrastructure, human life on this earth won't be possible if environmental infrastructure, and COVID is one example of that. Directly we see COVID-19 as some virus infecting human beings, but origin of that virus and introduction of that virus to human beings actually says a lot about environmental mismanagement which is being carried out in mad rush for development in our society, in our civilization. And we need to carefully consider this also. So there are a lot of issues. DP has requested all of us to have patience and ask your questions till the end of the session. But if you feel that some important question is bothering you when I am discussing these topics, then you can very well ask me anytime, and we will have a pause, and then I will answer your query, and then we will move. It's an exhaustive presentation because environment, if you look at totality, then it contains lot of phases, a lot of spheres are there, and there are interconnectedness, interrelatedness of these spheres, and then there are various impacts and all. So it is a very vast topic. I will try to keep it simple so that you get the gist of it. But if you want to know more, you can ask questions. And there are certain technical slides particular to the treatment and these things. So I'll giving you general idea about that. I won't be going into detailed discussion on these technicalities. But if you feel like that you want to know more, you can always ask questions later on. No issue with that. So let's. So first question which immediately comes to anybody's mind is, what is environmental infrastructure? What we are talking about? So basically, environmental infrastructure, we mean that those facilities and services which are required to provide good environmental conditions for function and growth of society. So the whole objective of providing environmental infrastructure is to ensure good environmental conditions so that society can function and grow effectively, efficiently. Now the next question is, what are these good environmental conditions? How we can decide that these conditions are good or bad? So basically, a general guideline is that conditions that ensure good health and functional efficiency of population, and to ensure that we provide an environment which is conducive for health and functionality of population or society, then we need to have clean air, clean water, clean land or clean soil. And to achieve this cleanliness, we need to provide sanitary conditions in surroundings. Wherever we live, wherever we function, the conditions should be sanitary. And by sanitary conditions, I mean hygienic conditions. Conditions which are directly related to cleanliness. And as you might remember that Gandhiji, whose 150th birth centenary we are celebrating this year, 2nd October, he once expressed that cleanliness is godliness. So it's very important for health and growth that we maintain all our air, water, land and soil in very prime clean conditions. So environmental infrastructure is needed to provide clean air. So clean air, of course, we all know that there are contaminants present in our air, and we need air pollution control to check that the concentration of these contaminants should not go beyond certain acceptable standards. Then we have to provide clean water, and for that we need to carry out water treatment, because none of our water sources are in such a prime conditions that we can supply water directly to the population. We need to go for water treatment. Then we have to provide clean surroundings. So clean surrounding basically is until unless we go for waste management rather. And waste management will involve treatment of liquid waste also, and treatment of solid waste also. So wastewater treatment, wastewater management and solid waste management. So this all part will come into, you can say, domain of environmental infrastructure. Now, if you look at environment, so what is environment? Environment we use in different contexts, different references. So depending upon what is the context or reference a person talking about environment is, environment can have different meanings, different connotations. So basically, what we are here talking about is physical environment. So physical environment, we all have studied in our school books, in environmental ecology paper and all. Basically, physical environment will consist of three, you can say, major spheres on Earth. atmosphere, which pertains to this air we breathe, then hydrosphere, which pertains to this water we use, and lithosphere, the soil surface on which we are dependent for our agriculture, for our minerals, etc., etc. So all these are interconnected and joined together to give rise to biosphere. And biosphere is where life is possible. Until unless we have this interconnectedness of atmosphere, hydrosphere, and lithosphere, life will be very limited. So life on Earth, as we see it in full bloom, it is possible only because these three are there, and in connection with these three, there are living beings. Plants are there, bacteria are there, microorganisms are there, then species are there, then animals, fish, aquatic species, then human being. So if we look at the pyramid of this thing, existence of various species on this earth, we can very well understand that human being is at the top of the pyramid. And we must understand that anybody at the top of pyramid has the maximum instability, has the maximum chances of being toppled down. And we all see that Krishna Janmashtami, that घड़ा फोड़ो जो चलता है मटकी फोड़ो है ना, उसमें people make huge pyramids, बट वो नीचे में से एक बंदे ने अगर खसक गया एक बंदा तो पूरा का पूरा ऊपर वाला सबसे पहले गिरता है. तो that we have certain privileges because of our capacities, our innate skills, but we are also at the most dangerous point. So when we are dealing with any environmental issue, we need to keep in mind this thing. So overall, you look at the environment. We need to have this thing: air quality, good air quality, good water quality, and good soil quality, so that we can ensure sanitary conditions. We can ensure conditions conducive for growth and function. So environmental infrastructure will be required actually to support all the domains of the environment, all the components of the environment. We need environmental infrastructure to maintain good quality of air, which is good for our health. We maintain this thing infrastructure to deliver to us water quality, good water quality, water of good quality. Then, of course, we need to manage our waste effectively, so that we have good quality of soil where good quality of agriculture, crop, and other food items can grow, fruits, etc. And then we have biosphere. In biosphere, we require environmental infrastructure to ensure that biodiversity is maintained, ecological balance is maintained. Why? As I was telling you, that we are at the top of the pyramid, and if this biodiversity is not maintained and some vital species, we may not be knowing anything about it. It may not be in our we haven't identified it till now. But if starting that species, maybe our survival depends on various actions carried out by these species, and will be in severe trouble. And you may be hearing about this, that this is the first time in life of Earth that rapid rate of species extinction is going on. So it is sixth, they say, mass extinction, and this is the most largest and most rapid mass extinction of a species. So these are challenging times. Ecological balance is being disturbed everywhere, be it water body, be it soil, be it air. All the aquatic life, all the airborne life, all the land, soil-borne life is in trouble. And why these are in trouble? Not because of natural reasons, because of anthropogenic reasons, because of man-created problems. So basically, environmental infrastructure, we can summarize that infrastructure that provides cities and towns with water supply, with waste disposal and pollution control services. And it includes actually all the paraphernalia, all the accessories, all the appurtenances which are essential to maintain, to establish, to maintain, to run these supplies. So you require extensive network of aqueduct, pipelines, etc. Aqueduct is a structure which is like we are carrying water through a pipeline or through a canal or through a channel, and you come against any obstruction, then you raise your structure, pipe or channel or canal, and take it above that obstruction. So that type of construction is known as aqueducts. And you will be surprised that aqueducts are very well known to human beings, since you can say Indus Valley civilization. Later on, Romans also have this huge aqueducts built to bring water to Rome. Then we need to create reservoirs to have ensured quantity of supply to the population. Then from reservoirs, after treatment, we need to have a treatment system, water treatment system, to treat the water to desired standards. Then we need to have water distribution pipes to take this water to population, to bring this water to your home, your house. So all this paraphernalia is required to give good quality of water at your doorstep. Then after use of this, this water will get contaminated. It can't be used for the same purpose again. So we need to again collect this water, which is known as sewage or wastewater. Sewage it is called because it flows through underground, mainly circular underground pipes, which are known as sewers. So you need to install collection system for this dirty water, waste, which is also known as wastewater. And you need to install a network of sewer pipes right from your house to the treatment plant. And several times, because of topographical conditions, the slope not being favorable, you need to maintain the flow in pipes, and you need to provide pumping stations. You need to pump the sewage so that it goes in the intended direction. Then after sewage has been received at the treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant, then you have to provide treatment systems to treat this sewage. So you need to provide settling tank, aeration tank, filtration, desalination plants. If you are living in a coastal area, then you don't have any other water supply, then you need to desalinate sea water, ocean water. Of course, it's very costly. And after you are done with all the waste treatment, and you have reminder waste, which you can't do anything about it, you don't know how to manage it, then you go for safe incineration of this waste, making sure that you don't cause air pollution. Then after this waste has been treated, then the remaining material, you need to go for waste disposal facilities such as sanitary landfill. And if waste is hazardous, then you need to go for hazardous waste storage impoundment. So these are special storage facilities, processing facilities and storage facilities, which are designed for hazardous waste. So the whole purpose of providing this environmental infrastructure objective is to protect human health and safeguard environmental quality, because human health, now we understand without any doubt that human health depends on good environmental quality. If environmental quality is compromised, our health is going to be compromised. And we are seeing it in rising number, this COVID-19 also, and other viral diseases which have come up recently, be it H1N1, be it you can say Ebola, etc., etc., and also number of cancer cases which are rising. These are only because of our this thing. We are not able to maintain this environmental quality and releasing in environment various contaminants, various pollutants, which are very harmful to human life. And some of these contaminants, pollutants, we even don't know about. So we need to be very careful what we do with the environment. So if you look at environmental infrastructure to give you the size, idea about size and scale. Agrawal sir? All good? So I hope I am audible. So if you look at this is you can say a treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant. So so when you collect wastewater, you bring that wastewater to this centralized treatment system, which has settling tank, which are known as clarifiers. Then you have aeration tanks, which aerate the wastewater for biological treatment. So we'll discuss about it in bit detail in later. But this is the kind of scale of infrastructure you need to provide. So you basically nowadays all domain of engineering are involved in designing, constructing, establishing, and running and operating this infrastructure, right from civil engineering to microbiologists, to chemical engineers, to mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, electronics and communication engineer, and with nowadays latest technological tools coming up, data collection of big data, data science, data scientists, then you have machine learning. Sensors are nowadays installed to collect data, and this data is fed into a computer which has this software which analyzes this data and tells the operator what to do. And then there are AI tools, artificial intelligence tools also being developed to tell the operators or to tell the engineers that what is the problem and what needs to be done, what are the various solutions So decision making is at the end of engineers now, but very soon we'll be having automated system where even decision making is done by AI, artificial intelligence, and the AI driven software will guide all the treatment units through various sensor operated devices what needs to be done. So we are entering into a very technology intensive one. This is water treatment plant. We were talking about water treatment. This is a typical water treatment plant which you can visit in your city. If you are living in a big city, then you have this elaborate water treatment plant which will having various unit operations, various unit processes to treat the water to the drinking quality. So this is one idea about the scale of water treatment. This is only a small fraction of this thing. This thing is huge usually. Again, sorry for same this thing. Again, another look at the wastewater treatment plant. So you have this aeration, then you go for settling. Sometimes filtration is also there. So depending upon what kind of pollutants you remove. So we now without now you see environmental infrastructure, human civilization won't survive, won't flourish, won't grow. And this becomes very challenging nowadays, particularly. Earlier it was easy because things were simple. Population was of a small size. It was not so densely populated cities and all. But after industrial revolution, and then we came with this thing, you can say software revolution. We have seen because this technology improved and quality of life improved, we have seen lot of population growth. And this population growth is mainly in urban sector, in cities. So a lot of urbanization has taken place. And because of this rapid population growth, rapid urbanization, the need to provide products and services to people, to all people, has grown. And because of that, industrialization has grown a lot. And with industrialization comes release of contaminants, and contaminants in all domains, be it solid waste, be it liquid waste, or be it air contaminants. And because of some of these air contaminants reaching to levels of such concentration that it is giving rise to, we can say, what is known as climate change. And a result of climate change is global warming. And because of global warming, we are having a lot of issues, which we will discuss later on. So because of this, there is, because population is growing and cities are growing like anything, you can take example of your own city. And if you can find Google images of, say, 10 years back or 20 years back, and you will be astonished to see that how much your city has grown. And because of this growth of population, there is continuous demand on existing infrastructure. And these demands actually create a strong case for continuous upgradation of your facility. Like earlier you have a water treatment plant, now this water treatment plant is not sufficient in quantity as well as kind of contaminants you are getting in water treatment. You were not getting that earlier. So we are having new and new type of contaminants coming up, and we need to, in future, we need to think about adopting treatment of these contaminants in our water treatment schemes. Similarly, you have, because of this population rise, there is lot of mismanagement of environmental infrastructure. Sometimes environmental infrastructure is not designed very carefully, or not constructed very carefully, or not operated carefully. Then you have lot of problems. And presently, all the problems are actually poor understanding about environmental management, poor implementation of environmental management. And that is why we are having this situation of water scarcity. We have situation of contamination of practically all our water sources, be it surface water, groundwater source. Groundwater I have mentioned here specifically because groundwater is earlier it used to be considered as a prime quality of water, but now we can't supply groundwater directly from tubewell to public. There are a lot many risks, and then we have several other environmental or public health problems. So purpose is that our environmental concerns for environmental management, and for good management, environmental infrastructure should be prioritized. Otherwise, we will having many such problems like we are having today. And many times the provision operation and maintenance work require a lot of investment, a lot of money is required. You want to establish a treatment plant, you want to establish a wastewater management system, you want to establish a solid waste management system. For even a city of a small size, it is few hundred crores. So it's a huge investment of public funds. So we, until unless we prioritize it, funds won't be released for these activities. And mostly we don't bother because we are getting water in our taps and our wastewater. The moment we flush, our waste is taken out, and moment we dump outside on the street, the waste is away from my home. So that, but that is making things very precarious, very, you can harmful. And because of that, we need to understand that we have, as a society, we need to put priority on environmental infrastructure so that at least our next generation can live a better quality of life than us. Present situation, our next generation is going to live a much compromised quality of life than what we are having today. So basically, and another thing, when we talk about environmental structure or when we talk about management, what happens? We usually think in silos. We focus on a particular, like we are focusing on water treatment. So we take water from some source and treat it to with the available technology, and how much money we are having it. Based on that particular technology will be implemented. We don't have money, we supply water as it is. But we forget that everything in environment is in continuum. It is one whole system, environment. It's not that the hydrosphere is independent, atmosphere is independent, or lithosphere is operating independently. They are all connected. You have contaminants released on land, then some of these may evaporate and join air. Some of these will flow when water precipitation occurs and water flow surface runoff occurs on surface of Earth. Then all this water will get in contact with these contaminants, and many of these contaminants get dissolved in water, or many of these contaminants will be carried forward through sheer velocity of water, and then it will join our aquatic system, and then again from our aquatic system there is exchange with the surrounding land surface and surrounding air. So environment is in continuum. So when we talk about environmental infrastructure, when we talk about rather environmental management, then we have to think about their interconnectedness. So you are seeing that how these things are connected in this slide, and what type of impacts, direct impact and indirect impact, are occurring. Another diagram showing continuity, interconnectedness of environment is this hydrologic cycle, and it's a beautiful example of interconnectedness of environment. So you can see that air is connected with water, water is connected with land. In turns, land can give back to water some this thing. Quality of water depends both on air and land in contact with it. Similarly, quality of land will depend on quality of air and quality of water on it. Because from air, we have always known that what goes up comes down. So from air contaminants will deposit on the land, affect the quality of land. Then surface runoff will take these contaminants to water. Then evaporation will take these contaminants to air. So there is interconnectedness in every possible way. And while we are thinking about environment management, we have to keep our eyes, keep our senses open to manage this interconnectedness also. So contaminants, quality parameters which decide the quality of air, which decide the quality of water, which decide the quality of soil or land, will move from one phase to another. They are always in contact with each other. So it's very important to look at the whole picture. And if we won't look at the whole picture, then two things will happen. Either we won't be solving the problem, or if we are solving the problem, it will become very costly. And if we look at the whole picture, we will come with the effective solution, and this solution will be economical because we are looking at the whole picture and we are acting at the right point where the picture is getting distorted, where the picture is turning bad. At that particular point, we need to intervene, and if we intervene at that particular crucial point, then at very low cost we can prevent what is going to happen in future in our water, soil, or air. So clean environment means clean air, clean water, clean land. But again, the question comes: how much clean? So question comes: how much clean? So to decide that how much clean water, how much clean air, and how much clean land or soil we require, we have quality standards set for water, air, land, and soil. So there are quality standards for water, which tell us that we need to maintain the concentration of various parameters to this level, to this value, so that water can be accepted for a particular use. Similarly, for air, which is basically we breathe, we have quality standards for this air also. Then we have quality standards for land and soil also. And these quality standards have been established based on exposure to, primarily based on exposure to human beings. So average human being of average weight and average lifespan during his or her entire life, if he or she gets the standard which has been prescribed for that contaminant, for that parameter. So no, according to present knowledge, no bad health effect will occur to him or her. That is the philosophy behind deciding the quality standards. And continuous research is being conducted, going on all over the world to actually research on these acceptable quality standards. And every couple of years, 2-3 years, we are having standards which are being modified. So if you look at water quality standards, and same is the case for all three, water, air, and soil. If you look at water quality standard, what type of standard need to be established or need to be followed will depend on intended use of water. For what purpose water we are going to use water, and for that particular intended use, the quality standards will be different. So if you are intending to consume this water for drinking or cooking, then there are drinking water quality standards. Then if you are going to use this water for irrigation, agricultural practices, then you have irrigation water quality standards. For industries, water quality, raw water quality required is different for different type of industry depending upon raw material, process, and end products. So you have this industrial water requirements are different. Then many other uses also. So depending upon a specific use, you have water quality standard to fit that particular use. And basically in India, there are certain global organizations also which do continuous research on these quality standards. Like one health specific standards are derived by World Health Organization, WHO. A lot of these standards come, research goes in particularly primary agencies, Environmental Protection Agency, USA, European Environmental Agency, in Europe, European Union. And India, if we look at this thing, various standards, then one agency which has been authorized to work in this area is Central Pollution Control Board. So Central Pollution Control Board works on a lot of these things, establishing standards for this thing. And another agency is, you can say, Bureau of Indian Standards. So after research has established that these are the requirements, then IS, Indian Standard, Bureau of Indian Standards publishes various codes establishing these standards. Like this is for drinking water standards. We have a code which is known as IS 10500. So let's have a look at this code. Let me go back. So I'll just this is a code. This is available on internet web. You can download it from archive if you are interested. Just Google for drinking water standards in India. You'll get code of this. So this is a 18-page code, and the title is Bharti Manak Peene Ka Pani and a drinking water specifications. So if you want to do anything with drinking water standards in India. And this code again takes inspiration for existing code, European Union, United States Environmental Protection Agency, World Health Organization guidelines for drinking water quality. And of course, Ministry of Urban Development, New Delhi publishes this manual on water supply and treatment. So if you are going to do anything with water supply and treatment, you need to follow this manual published by Ministry of Urban Development, New Delhi. So basically drinking water, this code IS 10500 is for drinking water, and based on, as I was talking about, that based on accepted quality parameters. And this have different tables like color. These are physical parameters which can be sensed by our sensitive organs. So it is also known as organoleptic or physical parameters. So color, odor, pH, taste, turbidity, TDS. So there are various acceptable limits are there. And when we are supplying water to population, we need to treat the water to make sure that these limits are not violated. We don't cross these limits. So this is about physical parameter. Then table 2 is about you can say chemical parameters which are undesirable in excessive amounts. So in a small amount they are not toxic. We can tolerate them. So these are constituents which are undesirable in excessive amount. So there is a limit for that. Like particularly if you look at calcium, it should be 75 milligram per liter as calcium. Then if you look at chloride, it should be 250 milligram per liter. So some of these standards for human health, some of these standards are acceptance of water. Water may be good for human health, but it is having color or it is having turbidity. It may not be acceptable to us. If it is having poor taste, and we don't like the taste, it is too saline. It may be okay for our health, but we won't drink it. We won't accept it. We'll reject the water. So all these issues are basically this thing. One particular parameter is fluoride. And fluoride, there is a standard for 1.0. Globally acceptable standard is 1.5. But in India, we have kept it 1.0. And because we have lot of fluoride problem, particularly in our groundwater. And fluoride give rise to one disease which is known as mottling of enamel. So if the population is exposed to higher fluoride concentration, particularly in groundwater, then at a JC concentration of 2 milligram per liter or something like that, you have this is discoloration of teeth. Mottling means discoloration of teeth. And if concentration goes beyond 2 and it reaches 3.54, then you have this what is known as skeletal fluorosis or dental fluorosis, and you don't want to expose your population to that. So fluoride has been limited to 1 milligram per liter. So there are similar, iron is 0.3, it is not because of health reason, it is because of stain causing property of iron. So iron will, beyond this concentration, iron and manganese, particularly manganese 0.1, will start causing color spots on your clothes, on your cutlery, on your utensils, etc. etc. So because of aesthetic appearance, you don't want iron and manganese. Health point of view, you can go beyond this concentration. But as you go higher, there is perceptible metallic taste in water also. So these type of concerns are there, like nitrate. Nitrate particularly causes blue baby disease, methemoglobinemia. So particularly, it is particular to infants, which are depending on mother's milk. So from mothers, if mother is exposed to higher level of nitrates in her drinking water, then what will happen? This higher nitrate concentration will be in mother's blood. And from mother's blood, it will come to her breast milk. And if she is feeding the baby, and baby has not started eating cereals, etc., other food, then baby's intestine will convert. There are not sufficient acidity present in baby's intestine because baby is depending only on lactose, breast milk. And in baby's intestine, this nitrate is converted to nitrite. And this nitrite has very specific, very huge affinity to hemoglobin. So this nitrite will join with this hemoglobin, making this methemoglobin and divide the kid's body, infant's body from oxygen. And infant will turn blue. And extreme cases, but kid may die also. So it is known as blue baby disease. Because of this, there is a very strict guidelines of 45 milligram per liter as nitrate. You should not have in your drinking water. And this is common. This nitrate contamination is common in areas where we use a lot of fertilizer, ammonium nitrate, urea, etc. So, top level agrarian belts like Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, you have a lot of nitrate in drinking water, which is causing problems. So, there are many such contaminants are listed. You have lot of you have read about hardness in your school and in your first year in your college engineering chemistry or applied chemistry. So hardness causes less foam or less lather with soap. So soap consumption increases, and again it is undesirable in water, boiler fed water. Then you have table 3 gives you parameters which are having toxic substances.
So these substances, even if very minute quantity, can be toxic to human beings, toxic to us. So you have all practically many heavy metals are there. Then organic one cyanide is there. Of course, cyanide is toxic. We know all. We all know that. Then there are certain organic contaminants, pesticides, polychlorinated biphenyls, polynuclear aromatic hydrocarbons, and mostly lot of industries use agriculture practices use lot of pesticides. Lot of industries use these chemicals for as cleaning agent, as a stabilizer, etc., etc. So you have there, see the limit, 0.0005 microgram के भी beyond चला गया ये है ना, 0.0001 again microgram per liter के भी beyond चला गया. So very minute quantity also we are going to have a problem. And once released from source, you have very difficult time in collecting them and treating them. It's next to impossible actually. Then chlorination, we do chlorination of drinking water, but chlorine, if organic matter is present in water, you haven't been careful about treating your water before chlorination, then you have what is known as chlorination byproduct or disinfection byproduct, and these are trihalomethane, these are known to be carcinogens. So this way, then radiological substances have their alpha emitters and beta emitters limit for that, so that you are not exposed to radiological substances. Then pesticides have been targeted product-wise. So particularly organohalogen compounds, they are very much carcinogenic, toxic, and they survive in environment for a very long time because of their toxicity. So there is a specific residue limit to individual pesticides. Then, of course, immediate impact of contaminated water is felt in bacteriological quality of drinking water. The moment pathogenic disease-causing microorganisms are present, we are exposed to that water, immediately we will develop either diarrhea or gastroenteritis, loose motions, watery discharge, jaundice, cholera, typhoid, amoebiosis. So water should be completely free from pathogenic indicators. So E. coli or thermotolerant coliforms or fecal coliforms are selected, you can say, are microorganisms which are tested for their presence in water. And if that these are present in water, then we need to be very careful about this proper disinfection of water. So these are all, you can say, standards which have been laid for 10500 standard. Then similarly, irrigation water quality again is not same as drinking water quality. For irrigation water quality also, there are standards laid out, and there is a specific code with this IS 11624, which has been promulgated in 1986. So this code is always valid. So I won't be going in details about irrigation water quality standards, but these are different than drinking water quality standards. In irrigation water quality standards, we are not much concerned about all the parameters which have been listed in drinking water standards. Mainly, we are concerned about salts. If salt concentration is more in irrigation water, sodium, calcium, magnesium, and other salts. So we have this index for electrical conductivity, salinity. We have a quality index for sodium absorption ratio, which is ratio of sodium with other polyvalent cations, calcium, magnesium being chief cations. So that ratio should be within certain limits. Salinity should be certain limits. Salinity means dissolved solid concentration in your water which you are using for irrigation needs to be in limit. And the standards are there laid down for irrigation water. What happens if you irrigate your field, irrigate your crop with higher salinity water? Every cycle of irrigation water will evaporate, leaving behind the salts in the soil. And after some number of cycles, the soil will become saline, and it won't be able to. The movement of nutrient from soil to plant will become severely limited, and soil will become barren. It won't be able to support the crop. And many of irrigated India areas in India are facing this problem of excessive salinity in soil, and soil productivity is getting down every year. So that is there. Then of course we have water requirement for industries. So industrial water quality standards will have. So for industry water quality, it is industry specific. So different industry will have different type of this thing, and we can have a just fast look at this water quality for industrial purposes. So there are a whole lot of Indian standard codes for this, And you have boiler feed water. There is a specific code IS 10496. Then you can say you want to make so iron removal के लिए, then there is specific code. So for different this thing you are going to make different things. You have different type. Pulp and paper industry, you have IS 2724. Swimming pool के लिए you have IS 3328. Tanning industry, leather tanning, and you require water to for the cleaning of leather. You have different IS code. So specific industry will have different specific requirements, and for that you have different IS code listed. So this set of IS code is there, and you can refer to that. So you need to treat water to those to bring water quality to that standard, so that your process, your product quality is maintained, and your process is so usually for drinking water and for industrial water quality requirement, mostly you need to treat the water. For irrigation water quality requirement, usually no treatment is given, because fortunately presently our water is not very saline, is particularly in plain area. But in coastal area you have water salinity as a problem, and then you need to have irrigation practices which are conducive to that quality of water. So crop selection, etc., kind of method of irrigation you are adopting. Again, it will come in environmental infrastructure, method of irrigation and all. So eco-friendly access you need to adopt based on your site requirements. What type of water you are having, what type of soil quality you are having. Based on that, you need to select judicially quality of crop. And then, like in India, there is a big mismatch actually. We are having areas which are deficient in rainfall. Rainfall, Haryana, Punjab. There is not that much rainfall that occurs in Chhattisgarh. But these areas are growing, you can say, rice, sometimes more than Chhattisgarh also. So rice is very water intensive crop, and in this area, you are going for excessive irrigation, and problem of soil salinity is coming up. So to have the desired quality of water, we need to go for water. Aerial view of water treatment plant, basically, which is you can go and visit in your city also your water treatment plant, and you can have a look at similar structures being there. So, but why water treatment is required? So, because basically we have all our water sources, be it surface water. This is two diagrams showing surface water quality. I think this is in some city in UP, and this is I think canal which is taking water to fields in some village. So this type of scene is quite common, unfortunately, in water bodies. You have a lot of waste being disposed, be it solid waste, be it you can say worship waste. Then you have a lot of nutrients released to water, which is causing what is known as algal bloom, excessive growth of algae, and eutrophication, excessive growth of plants. So water quality is compromised basically, and water needs to be treated. No source of water is safe. Even your groundwater which you are drinking, you don't know how many contaminants are dissolved in it. Like if you take, I am giving you example of Raipur city, but for Bilaspur you can take example of Arpa. For any city you are living in, you can take example of local river. Just have a couple of hours travel along the side of that river, and you will find several drains discharging into your river stream without any treatment. And this is mostly situation in all over India, and that is why you have Ganga Water Mission and then River Water Authority of India to look after quality of water in rivers. So raw water quality is being affected very badly. Raipur, there are many drains which are collecting wastewater from city and draining it into the Kharun river. So you have contaminated water. So you see that there is a scheme to actually treat this water coming from these drains which are joining the river, and then supply to the river the treated water. So that is one way of approaching controlling or managing the water quality in rivers and streams. So this is again, this is Kharun only, our own Kharun from where Raipur gets water. This is Anicut, and beyond Anicut, this structure on the top left is Anycut. This RCC structure you are seeing. Pipes are there, and above that, these pipes have been bounded by RCC, this thing frame. And this is known as Anycut, a small Anycut to store water. And if you look at further up, in these three, you have a structure. It is known as intake well. So, upstream of this Anycut, water is retained for this intake well in Kharun to collect water and to transmit this water to the water treatment plant. And downstream of the intake well, you can see that there is huge growth of aquatic plant. This type of growth is not desirable. It affects the complete ecology, complete biodiversity, which in turn affects the aquatic life of the river. So, and this eutrophication, this algal bloom is because of excessive nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus, joining the river. And from where they are joining? They are joining from these nalas, these drains which are discharging into the river. So this is another diagram of Kharun. You have this overbridge through which you cross to Durg state, and this is the scenario. You can see the waste which is being dumped, and again this figure, this thing. So our goal is clean water, and we need to provide. If we focus on drinking water quality only, we need to provide clean drinking water of the acceptable quality standard to the population. But source is contaminated. Be it surface water, be it groundwater, it is contaminated. So what the solution is that we need to create environmental structure for this water treatment so that we separate all these contaminants and water. And how? So that is how it is being done. So why we need water treatment? Because in present situation in India, none of the water sources are having required water quality as required for drinking water. So all these sources are contaminated. If you supply directly, the impact on human health will be unthinkable. Diseases, there will be diseases, and which are already manifestation is visible to us. Number of cancer cases that are rising, number of gastrointestinal cases, number of typhoid, number of jaundice cases rising. You have these are manifestations because we are not able to maintain the quality of our raw water sources. Treatment technology has a limit, and even if technology is available, the money available has a limit. So priority should be protection of sources. Priority should be water management. Then taste and odor and other aesthetic issues are there to provide safe, potable, and wholesome water for domestic water supply. And for water is also required for other purposes. So industry irrigation also we need to make sure that required quality is delivered. So we require water treatment depending upon desired quality for a specific purpose. So treatment scheme typically will have you have a surface water source or you have a groundwater source. So first thing is that you need to establish, design, establish, operate and run environmental infrastructure to ensure that sufficient quantity of water of the required quality is available perennially throughout the year and for long time to come in your river or stream or lake or reservoir. So most of the common infrastructure is you can construct a dam on flowing river and create a reservoir or create a lake, or there may be, if you are fortunate, there may be a natural lake and you can tap your water from that. If surface water is not available in your vicinity, then you need to go for groundwater, tapping of groundwater, and then you can drill a bore and have a tube well installed on this, or if you are fortunate, you can have a natural spring coming up in your area, you can tap water from that. So for this, all this you require infrastructure. You require, if river and stream or lake or reservoir there, you need to put up what is known as intake structure to collect the water from this river or water from lake or reservoir. This intake structure will be typically having RCC structure installed in river, flowing river installed in lake or reservoir screen. So screens are made of bars with a small opening so that large size solids don't enter into this intake structure. And the inside of the intake structure will be hollow where water will be collected. And this will be intake structure will be typically having two floors. One is known as wet well, another top one is known as dry well. So wet well, water is stored. Dry well, you have electrical supply units and all. And in wet well, submersible pumps are there from where water is pumped to your water treatment plant. If you are going for groundwater tapping, then common structure is tube well, and then in tube well a pump is installed, and from that you pump your groundwater to your treatment plant. So water treatment is required to deliver desired quality of water. So you have a source of water which has certain quality, and this certain quality will obviously not match the desired water quality for that particular intended purpose. So you will require treatment. And for drinking water quality, because it involves all type of treatment, so we'll discuss drinking water infrastructure required for drinking water quality. For drinking water quality, you'll have to have what is desirable is we need to supply safe, palatable, which can be drink by human being. It should have suitable odor, suitable taste, suitable color, which we accept as good quality drinking water. It should be drinkable, it should be safe, it should not have any harmful contaminants present in it, and it should also provide the required minerals. Wholesome means it should have required minerals which are required for the human body. And wholesomeness actually is severely compromised if you are having what is known as RO system installed in your house. And recently, National Grid Tribunal has directed Government of India to stop ROs for sale in areas where total dissolved solids in water is not more than 500 milligram per liter. So if your area is having total dissolved solids less than 500 milligram per liter, the RO is going to be banned, because RO in a reverse osmosis process, what happens? All the dissolved solids are removed and water becomes, you can say, entirely free from all the dissolved solids. But not all the dissolved solids are undesirable. You require certain dissolved solids, minerals for your health, particularly some calcium, some magnesium, little bit of chromium, little bit of iron, little bit of copper, and lot of these minerals we get from drinking water. So because of that, you have these famous actors recommending RO. But if you look, my personal opinion, RO should not be installed in for this thing, drinking water purpose. You can install RO for other purposes, but it is not suitable for drinking water. So stream water, surface water quality will have different type of raw water quality, groundwater quality will have a different type of water quality. So surface water quality of, again, there can be two type of sources. One is flowing stream or flowing river, and other is reservoir, where water is quiescent condition, you can say calm conditions, or a lake in which water is in quiescent fluidity, lot of solids are there, suspended and colloidal solids, so water will look dirty to us, and that property is known as turbidity. Then you have microorganisms which are pathogenic, disease causing, and are coming into surface water. Lot of organic matter will join surface water because of surface runoff. And there are so many other dissolved contaminants which are harmful to human health if you can continue to use for a long time. So basically we target these removal of these impurities, these contaminants. Lake or reservoir quality, particularly a lot of suspended solids may be there because of eutrophication, because of algal bloom. Because if water is not flowing, then this algal bloom and aquatic plant will have chance to grow. If water is flowing rapidly, then they won't have chance to grow. They will be flushed out from the water. And a lot of soil erosion will be bringing in the catchment area, may bring a lot of suspended solids to the reservoir or lake. A lot of colloidal and dissolved solids may be there because of biochemical reactions going on continuously inside the lake or reservoir body. A lot of nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus, will be joining from the catchment area. A lot of pathogenic microorganisms may join from the surface runoff, which is joining the lake or river from the catchment area. And of course, there will be other impurities. So we need the extremely processes terminology from chemical engineering. So unit process, when chemical biological principles are involved in treatment, then it is known as unit process. Unit operation, when physical principle of physics are involved in treatment, then you have unit operation. So sedimentation, filtration, typically unit operation. Unit processes, you can say when you go for coagulation, flocculation, or you go for chlorination. So we need to target these contaminants, which we know that may be there in raw water quality. So we need to investigate the raw water quality and then find the gap between the raw water quality we are having and intended drinking water quality, for example, and then select the required unit operations, the required unit process to treat the water. So common unit operations, common unit processes in water treatment are listed in this diagram. So storage is water treatment. Basically, you need to store the water somewhere. Either you store it in intake well or you store at the plant site, and then you go for what is known as if your water quality is very bad, then you need to go for a little bit of chlorination, which is before any treatment. And since this disinfection is before any treatment, it is known as pre-chlorination. Then what is you need to aerate because water may be having several gases, so you need to go for aeration. Then you need to add some coagulants and mix it rapidly so that coagulant is uniformly distributed in water body. So why we need coagulant, we'll discussing later on. Then you need to go for slow mixing so that flock formation is possible. So larger side solid formation enmeshed in a flock takes place, and then you settle out these flocks in your sedimentation tank. And after sedimentation, you need to go for filtration depending upon at what scale, how much amount of your capacity is, how much amount of water your treatment plant is treating every hour. Either you can go for slow sand filtration or you can go for rapid sand filtration. And then if your water is very hard, then you can go for softening. And then disinfection is must. Any source you are having chlorination or disinfection, this is since it is given after the treatment, it is known as post chlorination. Then of course, if your water is having a lot of dissolved solids, then you can go for demineralization. Of course, demineralization is a costly process too. Usually, conventional water treatment scheme, we don't go for demineralization. We don't go for softening. If water is having hardness beyond 350, 400 milligram per liter as calcium carbonate, then we may be thinking about softening. For domestic water treatment, mostly we don't go for softening. So other units are quite common, and depending upon raw water quality, you can have judicious selection of these units so that your water treatment is economical. Not you won't be needing all these units, but given the condition of our surface water sources, most of these units except softening and demineralization is required actually nowadays. So, so conventional surface water treatment scheme will typically look like this: that you have raw water, you screen the raw water, then you go for coagulation, adding up chemicals which coagulate the solids, generate flock, and solids particles are attached with these flocks, making bigger solids. Then you settle them, then you go for filtration, then you go for disinfection, and after disinfection, this water is treated, it is stored, and after storage, it is distributed to the population. So typical water supply scheme, you have a raw water source, and from raw water source to the consumer end. This is a typical water supply scheme, which is mostly common in all the cities, all the towns in India as of now. So treatment plant can have different layout, different units depending upon the quality of surface water. So you can have this thing aeration, then you can go for coagulation, flocculation, settling, filtration, disinfection, and then you can supply the water. So this is a common surface water. You can sometimes groundwater quality is very good, then you can directly go for chlorination so that you are inactivating disease causing microorganisms or organisms known as pathogenic organisms, and then you discharge the water. So there can be other combination also. So these 10, 11 unit operations, unit processes are available at your disposal. As environmental infrastructure professional, you can select suitable combination of these unit operations, unit processes, to depending upon your raw water, what is the quality of your raw water and what type of drinking water quality you want. So this is another diagram of various unit operation processes arranged in sequence. So objective is that these unit operations and unit processes selected in such a way that we are able to ensure supply of safe, palatable, potable, wholesome water to consumer economically. So already I think we are having around 1 hour of discussion. So I'll take, you can say, we all can take 5 minutes break, and let's join together at say after 5 minutes break. According to my watch,